Hello, welcome to the Live Life Now podcast. For those who have not seen me before, my name is Brian. I have been basically creating different episodes about different experiences in my life, things I have, knowledge on that I feel like would be interesting to share, or just interesting stories about things. And today's episode is about how I host an improv troupe and basically how improv works and how the troupe itself works. So, to give you a little bit of background, I have been doing improv pretty regularly, pretty much weekly or near weekly, almost completely since probably about 2021. Now I did improv just like anything else. During the pandemic, I was looking for things to do, looking for things online. I found an improv group called Cutler Bay Community Theater. It was on meetup.com. And I was from Miami initially, originally grew up and lived there for the majority of my life. So I ended up joining, thinking, oh, cool, there's an improv group in Miami. That would be awesome to be part of and see what it's like. Ended up really enjoying myself, realizing that my years of sarcastic and funny and silly comments in school or with friends had a really good place in something like improv where I could just come up with jokes and characters and whatever came to mind, depending on the games we were playing. And got really into it, started looking for other options. When I started looking for other options, I came across two other groups that I ended up joining. And once again, each group that I joined through Meetup was different from the next, different types of hosts, different types of improv, different types of games, basically. And eventually I was like, I need to try to start doing this in person. And I found this other group that was going, that was calling itself acting, basically acting improv for all ages. And went to that. Was also another fun group I enjoyed being part of, but it was also a virtual group, and I was unable to find, unfortunately, the in-person ones without paying some big money to be part of them, as there are numerous groups out there, but they want you to go through classes and work your way up a system of where they teach you their way, and you have to basically graduate like a class. So that really is interesting and all, and I'm sure that is very beneficial for a lot of people, but really wasn't what I was looking for. So I just continued doing the virtual improv. Eventually, the host of the acting workshops for all ages group that I was part of decided he no longer wanted to do it. He started missing events that he himself had planned. He would end up canceling them last minute. Ultimately, he was like, hey, I need somebody else to take this thing over. I was on the fence about doing it. And just like with anything else, I think the reason I was on the fence about doing it was because it was scary to me. And I felt like this was a challenge and I needed to give it a shot. I had filled in a little bit here and there in that group when he couldn't make it to just come up with some games. I still have an improv book that I often use. So anyways, once I decided I got to do it, I signed up, became the host, took it over. And what was great about it was that now I could make the games that I wanted to play, or that I, would hope other people would enjoy, instead of having to do it the other way around. So that was really nice. But there also is a lot of responsibility in doing a group and hosting. You have to be entertaining. These meetups are reviewed. People will bash you if they don't think you are immediately amazing, sometimes within a matter of minutes. They want you to start on time. You got to hopefully have a good group of people together that are up for games and willing to play, because sometimes it's very possible for people not really to get how it works and not really be in a silly mood. So there's a lot of things we do to make people get in a more silly mood. Typically what improv groups do, and what I do with my group, is called warm-up games. It's just basically like icebreaker type of situations. You try to come up with random or funny scenarios, usually go down the line. You try to involve everybody that showed up in some level to participate. That way they feel connected to what you're doing, and just kind of gets them in the right frame of mind a lot of times. Once the warm-up games are done, then you have your actual improv games. Now, improv is kind of, it's way different than other types of acting. Most acting is done with scripts. People memorize lines. Improv is the opposite of that. You're typically not memorizing anything. You are completely making up storylines and characters and everything else right there on the spot. And the best improv typically happens when it just comes out naturally, But not everybody has that natural ability. That being said, it is something you can definitely learn, and that's something that I've gotten better at with time. It was, while I felt like I had some type of natural, or at least experience with my own silly comments with my friends and in class back in the day, and also recording videos with my friends, just being silly around town in Miami back in the day. Being in a performance with a group of people, with a bunch of strangers, was always slightly intimidating, but also because I had performed on stage with my bands, because I had done open mic nights, not only with music, playing guitar, but also once with poetry. I had taken an acting class once that was called Acting Atlanta, and I tried all types of different acting styles. And we're talking probably about 2018, 2019. And what I realized is, out of all the acting styles we tried that day, back in, when about 2018, 2019, improv was my most favorite by far. I don't necessarily consider myself somebody that's great at memorizing lines. And even if I did, I don't necessarily think I'm like, the best actor by any means. That takes a lot of time and practice and experience. So I felt I was much better in a silly, but sometimes serious, depending on the situation, if it calls for it, type of improv style. So I quickly realized when I was going through my meetup groups, before I was hosting, that I often, people looked forward to me being in the groups. People, they would sometimes do a line of the night. And more often than not, my lines of the night, or my random lines that I used in my scenes earlier in the night, were chosen as the line of the night. And so that gave me a lot of confidence that people were connecting with what I was saying and doing. But it is difficult, because while you are making things up on the spot, there are substantive rules to a lot of these games. And you think, well, how can there be rules to something that's made up and improvised, right? Well, it turns out, like a lot of the games, even though there's no one specific way you have to play these games, there are rules to how the scenes should work. There are different types of games. They don't always have to be scenes either. So basically, it can be broken up in multiple things. It can be broken up in scene games, of course. That's when people know the most. But there's also non-scene games, which can be everything from like game shows to like monologues, something that's not building characters as deeply. Usually it's a little more straightforward, I guess, whereas the scenes are more like you're building the characters' relationships between one another. There's also games that are known as quirky games, which are like kind of like just like your weird or odd type of games. There's guessing games. There's singing games. There are a couple others too, but basically, there's the inner dialogue games, which is basically you maybe in a scene. Step out games is one of the names for it. It's that you're in a scene, and like maybe you're having a scene and you're having a back and forth with a character, but you're not saying or at least your character is not really saying what they are really thinking. So at that moment, you may say step out or monologue, and the person will be like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm really thinking and feeling, but I can't say it, or I don't want to say it, or whatever. Then you go back into the scene. So those are the step out games. So there's all types of varieties of stuff, and some people are up for some things, but not others. Then you have to kind of have a balance of creating what's known as a safe space for your other improvers, but you also have a duty to kind of make it fun and interesting and be funny and come up with different topics. But then also you have to learn your audience. Sometimes you can cross further along the line and be a little more PG-13 in your comments, or versus with other ones you have to learn that, oh no, these people are very, they don't want to get anywhere close to that type of line. So you don't always know until you feel out the situation. So you start playing the games, you start seeing who sticks around. Usually people stick around longer and longer. They are more open to anything. They're enjoying what you're doing. So you might be able to go a little further in regards to your topics and your scenes, being a little more adult sometimes. But, you don't have to do that to be funny, and you definitely don't have to do that to be interesting. So to each their own with that. So when I do my improv, most virtual improv groups are done usually about an hour, maybe hour and a half, so that you have time to flesh out, a bunch of improv games and just give everybody a chance to play, basically. I quickly realized that a lot of times when you're in some of these groups, you don't get to play all that often because there's only so many limited spots. So I decided, number one, that I'm going to try to include everybody more, as long as they want to be included in play, of course, not force anybody not to do anything they don't want to, but, give more opportunities for everybody to be included. And then number two, make the improv sessions longer, because that way you can play more games, you can play a better variety of games, and ultimately the people that can't play longer or don't want to play longer, they can leave. And the other ones that do want to stick around, and great, all the better. So I quickly realized that I kind of like I'm kind of like a short attention span type of person, and I didn't want to have long drawn out scenes that go on, 15, 20 minutes and overcome the majority of the sessions. I liked having kind of like short attention span, like, okay, let's play a game. 5 minutes later, another game, and just keeping it exciting and interesting and keep people on their toes and guessing, but also paying attention. If people are not enjoying something, be ready to change it and improvise and call an audible if necessary. So I've been looking out for all that. And because of all that, that means I have to be further prepared than any of the other improv groups I've been part of. Normally, in a lot of these improv groups, there's kind of like a set amount of games that they will play. And it's usually not that many, maybe somewhere in the 5 to 6 games range, because they don't have to have that many if they're not going as long. But the thing with that is, the more you go and the more you are part of these sessions, they often end up repeating the same games over and over, which quickly becomes monotonous. I think if you do it enough, you start kind of losing interest. It's always kind of like the same thing every time. Sure, it may be different scenes or scenarios, different scene partners perhaps, but it doesn't feel as fun, because it's like you feel like you're watching a movie you've already seen before. So that's not the purpose of improv. Improv is to keep it interesting and new, and keep exploring different levels of comedy, but at least for me. So I quickly realized, like, I don't want to repeat games that often. And even if I do repeat certain games, I want to put different spins on them that are not the common way to play those games. And I also want to create my own original ideas. Now, granted, some of the ideas I come up with may have been created by somebody else, but they're not things that I can readily find easily available on the internet or in my improv book, or and I've never personally played them before in any of the other groups. Then I consider those original games or original ideas of mine. So it's a tough balance. You're usually working with people of all ages. I've had people in the groups as young as being in elementary school and as old as, who knows, maybe 80. So you have to be able to cater to different audiences, different generations sometimes, and that's not always easy. And ultimately, what I decided to do is make it fun for myself. If I enjoy it, if I'm enjoying the topic, if I'm enjoying the game, then usually other people are too. And so I just kind of keep that in mind. Yeah, I have had incidents where people have been offended by some of the topics of the games, or they felt people crossed the line of some sort, or maybe they just didn't want to play because they didn't feel comfortable for whatever reason. And those are tough lessons to learn. It's like hosting a party when you host an event like this, even if it's virtual. And people started reaching out to me to possibly do it in person. But then when I tried to put something together, people didn't actually show enough interest to meet up in person. Anyways, that's a side note. So basically, just saying is there's a lot to it. I push myself to keep it fun and exciting, not only for others, but for myself. There's also money involved when it comes to things like Meetup, and oftentimes even with Zoom. So I have been doing donation type of systems, and it's been really good. You definitely have people that will donate, or at least donate once, and every little bit counts. The fees, while not overwhelming, are definitely quick to add up. And if you are doing a group for people that people aren't even showing up that often, and then the people that do are complaining, and then you have to pay all these fees, and you're basically losing money to host these events. At some point, at least for me, I start feeling like, man, why am I even doing this? So the donations, if anything, more than just the monetary portion of it, they show me that people are enjoying themselves, that they want me to continue, and that they appreciate my efforts ultimately, because sometimes it takes hours to find new topics, research new games, figure out new prompts for the scenes or the scenarios that we use in the games, and just honestly just brainstorm. Ultimately watch what other improv groups have done, or other improv YouTubers do, or whatever. All that stuff helps, and it's helpful to get inspiration, because there's other people that have been doing this a lot longer than me. Like I mentioned, I've really only been doing regular improv for, as of the time of this video, maybe about 3.5 years. And there's people that have been doing this for decades. And by no means do I feel that I know more than they do. But you know what? I'm a quick learner, and I definitely felt like I caught on very quickly to what it was and what it isn't. And just to kind of sum up what improv is, it's usually based on what's known as a yes and system. Yes and basically means that you accept what the people in the scene are saying as truth. So if they are saying that you are, I don't know, let's say you're on a farm. Okay, you don't go, no, we're not. We are at the supermarket. That kills the imagination of it. Typically, you don't want to shoot down people's ideas. Do you have to agree with everything they say? Absolutely not. Sometimes that conflict can be good, but you don't want to change the make-believe that you're creating. You want to build the other person up. It's kind of like a volleyball match. You want to set the other person up so that they can knock it down and be the best team partner possible. So that's one part of it. Secondly, though, it's kind of like when we're kids, we don't overthink the games. We just pick up toys, we play, we make friends easy. It's not so overly complicated. We don't have all these responsibilities. So basically what I'm saying is that improv is like an escape of sorts, temporary escape, of course. But it's fun to be creative and do things that a lot of us don't get to do on a daily basis. We have other things where, we have to have jobs and maybe school or whatever the case may be. It's not always top priority to, be a creative person and just have fun with others and let your guard down at times. Like usually that's not what adults often are able to do because of other, responsibilities. And you learn that's not what being an adult is on some level for a lot of people. So anyways, by doing the improv, it keeps think's more social for me. Like it gives me more of a social life, especially after moving to Georgia and having difficulty, making friends as an adult. And my social network was in South Florida, and those people are no longer around. So having to basically start over in a lot of ways, and then starting over with jobs, starting over in relationships. So there's been a lot of changes in my life. So it doesn't always make it easy to make new friends in person and locally. So the virtual improv helps me meet people from all over the US. Sometimes they are in Canada or elsewhere. There's a lot of stuff to it. So there's a lot of positive benefits. And if you are watching this and you have never done improv, or if you've done improv and you want to try it in my group, please feel free to look me up on Meetup. The group is called Acting Workshops for All Ages, or might be under Improv Workshops for All Ages. Just look me up by name. My name is Brian Peterson, and I'm going to put a bunch of links in the chat. So feel free to join, and hope to see you there. But otherwise, if you don't, no worries. Thank you for listening. There's a little background on how I became an improver, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.